Oh, I'm boys with them. We gel well. We have good personalities. We're a team. We're a bunch of brothers, and they think I'm good. So they really did. It was so simple. I really just joined.
All right, hello everybody, welcome back. It's episode 4 of the Jake and Guz show, and the special guests continue to roll through the door. We have another one today, Jake, once again from PUBG, so I will let you do 99% of the talking.
You better not. I need you to get involved. Yeah, we're very fortunate. We've got Mr. Lachlan Flood Thompson in today, another Australian import over to North America. Flood, I just want to say very quickly that when I first met you, you were the size of a baby. And now look at the size of... Give us a flex. Oh, that's the actual flexer right there. How are you, mate? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm great. I'm actually really ecstatic to have you on here for a bit of a chat. Obviously, following in the shoes of one of the elites in good old Mr. James Tiggleton. Did you watch the episode?
Yeah, I did. I feel like I'll always be behind him a few steps. He's just the GOAT, I guess. But yeah, no, I thought the episode was really good. I really liked it. That's why I'm here.
Yeah,
it was a good episode. I wanted to do one myself.
Obviously, you feel like you may be behind him. What about Luke? Are you in front of Luke now? Surely.
Oh yeah, probably. He had a shocker. He had a bad year.
It peaked in 2019. All right. Obviously, for those maybe a little bit unfamiliar with yourself, your journey, we can kind of just get a little bit of an introduction here for those maybe not as aware. Obviously, you're not as much of like a streaming hotshot, if you will. You are very much like a professional, competitive PUBG player. Just quickly, you don't have to go too in depth, but a bit of a TLDR, if you will, in terms of the way your career started and how you got into PUBG esports.
All right, so I guess the quickest TLDR is I started playing in high school, around middle of year 12, which my parents really hated, to be honest. They hated me because I didn't try very hard in my VCE studies. But I played with Athletico Academy at the time, which was, Athletico was the biggest org, I guess, back then, or like the most reputable.
Yep.
And I played with the Academy team, and for a while I was just playing Tier 2, Tier 3, and then I slowly just moved up the ranks. I was just playing. I wasn't necessarily good. I was actually pretty bad in my opinion. But I slowly just climbed up the ranks. I was quite good friends with people like Tig and some of the old Athletico guys, so they really helped me get better just from being a mentor. And from there, I really skyrocketed my career once I joined Athletico. I think it was in 2019 I joined Athletico. But from there, like once you start getting international experience, you kind of just get really good really quick. So I feel like I progressed a lot as a player from 2019 to 2021 when I went from Athletico, then to Bay, then to Fury, which was probably one of the best OS teams in terms of like consistency. And then from there, after PGC 2022, I ended up joining Oath Gaming, which then turned into eUnited, which is now Luminosity Gaming. So yeah, I've bounced around a bit in OS and then managed to find my way into an American team.
You've had a pretty... I want to say normal career path in terms of starting low and then building. You've never really had that sort of massive drop off. I feel like you've always been able to just take that next step, keep going to that next step.
Yeah, I feel like that's what kind of maybe differentiates me from a lot of other pros. I'm like really bad at every FPS game I play. I'm like Silver 3 in CS or something awful. Like I really sucked at FPS games every game I played. So I knew what it was like to be bad. I think a lot of the pros in PUBG now, like they were always good to some degree as like a starting point. So I feel like that maybe is what differentiates me is like I started off really bad, like less than 0.5 KD. And like I've made my way up through just progressing consistently.
That's interesting. I actually did not know about that particular part of you in terms of the fact that you're dog shit.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, right? Obviously trying to improve, but also proving to your family, right, that you could actually turn this into a career. How has that been, like trying to convince them, and maybe at what point did you feel like you actually did make it?
Oh, I think the point that really was like the tipping point was when I went up to my mum and I said, "Hey, I'm going to Sweden. I don't really care what you say." And she was just like, "What? Like, what do you mean by that?" And then I just said, "Do you really care? Like, it's just I'm going anyway. There's no convincing me otherwise." And then we came second. That was GLL Grand Slam. That was my first LAN, and I brought back a pretty nice paycheck. And she was like, "All right, do it. Go for it. If you want to, why not?"
Were you in school that year?
No, I just started university. So
right. Okay.
It was my first year uni.
Well, put a pause on some of the more earlier parts of your career, because we've kind of got some really good segments to really dive deeper into those. I think they're quite fascinating, so we can talk about that. In terms of relevancy to now, it's been a bit of an off period since PGC 2023, but that being the closest big tournament, if you will. We'll kind of touch on that a little bit. Just prior to that, though, you guys as a team made a pretty big roster move. You and the Sonics basically did an effective swap, Kickstart and Mime, basically swapping teams. The first thing I want to add, was that always an intention? Was like that just like a coincidence that they just happened to be like, all right, well, that just came about? Or what was... Talk us more about the move and the swap and all of that.
Well, I think on Luminosity or EU, when we had Kick, we identified like weaknesses of the team. I think we... in better way to say it, we lacked a lot of balls and testicles, and we always thought like we need someone like Mime, like we need someone who just doesn't give a fuck and he just runs in and dies if he needs to. So we're like, oh well, we want Mime, and we didn't really know if Mime was available, and we were like, oh, we should get Roth. Like Roth's very similar to Mime. He's basically just the budget Mime. They're both very good, don't get me wrong. Shout out to Roth, I love you. But yeah, we're like, oh, well, maybe Mime. And then, well, we found out Kick left to Sonics, and we were like, well, that means one of them has to go, and we're assuming it's Mime, and because he looked so sad during PGS2 after they won PGS2, yeah? Mm-hmm. So we're like, oh, well, let's get Mime. Like, that just seems like a shoo-in. Like, we need that type of player. We need that type of confidence. So it was really easy for us. We did do some trials, but, like, after... we didn't have much time to trial, so we just thought, you know... he fits in the best. He's what we know he is. So we'll just go with him, see how it goes. And that's what we did.
So what's interesting about that is basically you're saying you wanted Mime even while he was still a Sonics player. And that you guys felt that Kickstart was the one to, I guess, make way for him. How much of that was more down to what you wanted from Mime versus what you didn't have from Kickstart?
Oh, it wasn't even like necessarily just Kick. It was more of like the whole team atmosphere. I think Kick is a very like disciplined and passive player, and I think the whole team kind of reflects that. I think so. It was really hard to. You can't just say it was just Kick. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like it was anyone needed to step up and do what Mime kind of does, being like a front man. So yeah, I guess it wasn't necessarily one person.
Yeah, and because I'm going to bring this back. I had a look back to PGC 2022 Dubai. Mm-hmm. Obviously, this was a tournament that Kickstart absolutely fragged out. If you recall, I think he actually finished the tournament as the player with like the best KDA or something along those lines. So there's going to be a lot of people who would look at that and say, well, you've gotten rid of one of the better players on your roster. But I will say, mind you, that was also a long time ago from when the change did end up happening.
No, that makes sense. Like, I feel like a lot of viewers will just look at stats and not really understand where those stats actually come from and how those stats get there. I think in saying that, Kick's really, really good at getting kills and just putting damage out and finding picks for free. So, like, obviously he's a great player, but honestly, in order to be the best PUBG team or just great in general, you need to do more than just get kills, right? Like, you have to be an actual team player. You have to interact with the team and make sure you're working as a unit, right? So even though those kills are going out great, and like he did have the best KDA in the tournament from his incredible performance in groups and I think losers or winners, I can't remember. But like at the end of the day, the only thing that matters was grand finals, right? And I think he knows, like everyone on our team knows that like he was a little in shambles. He had some stuff personally going on. So I do think that it's more than just stats, you know, like people like to look at overall statistics and make assumptions, but I think it's really important to look at things from a more human level than just a number.
I definitely agree with the sentiment that viewers often don't really know what they're talking about, and we'll look at numbers and stuff like that. What kind of time frame do you and the team look at when considering a roster change? Is this like a one tournament thing? Is it 6 months, 12 months? What kind of time frame do you put on it?
Oh, it's really hard. Like PUBG is like that type of game where a roster change doesn't necessarily fix problems. It usually creates new ones, and you just have to like kind of figure out which problems are better, I guess. So you have to be really careful with roster changes. I think all the best and most successful teams just thug it out. You know, they stick together for as long as they can, and then if issues become unfixable or at least unmanageable, that's when you make roster changes. I do think we made a roster change at a really good time. I think. Well, Kick left, so I guess he made the decision. But I do think that the time that the roster change came was like pretty much perfect because we were definitely splitting paths away. We weren't really gelling as a team anymore.
Yeah, you said that Kick left. It was his decision, but being frank, he was probably the one on the chopping block, and maybe he just got that sense.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily. He was definitely on the chopping block in sense of he was the odd man out, but like he's always been like that phenomenal player. So it's like it was got to be one of the hardest decisions to make. It's like, wow, do we drop one of the best players in the world? Mm-hmm. So honestly, him leaving gave us a bit of like, okay, cool. We know that this decision needs to be made because he made it for us.
Yeah, in the end, it ends up being basically 1-for-1 in terms of the fact that you're essentially losing one of the best players, but you're also gaining one of the best players, and it just comes down to team fit, and that's something that people obviously have to understand, where it's like, all right, well, you might benefit more from Mime than what Sonics would, for example, so you guys feel like you're gaining something, and they might feel like they might gain something from Kickstart over Mime. Both teams are happy. One maybe happier than the other, because we'll transition to essentially now playing with Mime going into PGC 2023. 8th overall, which is not bad, especially off the back of a roster move. Obviously, you did play America Series 2, or whatever it was called. I can't remember. I don't see. It was such a weird year for tournament names. But you played one qualifying in tournament with Mime. Then you played PGC. I guess what were the internal expectations? Because anytime you make a roster change, it's not the same as if you've had that same core four for like over a year. You're striving to be the best, to win it all. Not saying that that wouldn't have been a goal or an aspiration for you guys, but clearly you would have been like, okay, well, this might not be the tournament we see the best version of us.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Like when we first got Mime, like we knew that we lost a big amount of calling power. Like Kick made a lot of calls for our team. He was like a big end game leader. So we knew that Mime was a similar role, but we knew he was very different. So we came with the expectation, and we knew that we were going to have to just go with the flow a little, see how it goes, not have too high expectations. We were a little disappointed. We lost PAS 2. I feel like we played really, really well. That's the thing with the weaker regions, is when there's other really good teams who also play really well. It's just
Friendly Fire won that, right?
Yeah, they won that one, but they ran away with it in the last few games. But yeah, like when regions are weaker, the gaps just get harder, and it's easier for teams to do well. So they played really well, but we were a bit bummed we lost that because we felt like we played really well. But yeah, as far as I've already forgotten the question, to be honest.
Mate, come on now. Come on now.
But that was the first half of the question.
It was a pretty long question. I'll give you that. I mean, like, I guess it's not really even a question. It's more of a discussion point. Okay. Like, obviously, going into PGC, you answered that. The expectations weren't going to be win it all or bust. Like, for example, I think this is the intriguing part for Sonics. The expectation probably going in is to contend for number one, even though they made a roster move. But is the expectation for Luminosity Gaming number one, even though you made a roster move?
Yeah, look, honestly, now that I remember what you said, PGC, we kind of came at it with, look, we need to get experience under our belt. You know, like there's going to be many more events to come. We don't plan on really making many more changes unless we really, really have to. I do think that our expectations changed mid-tournament. I think when we realized how like close to being great we were like, wow, we shouldn't be aiming just to be mediocre and like just doing our best. We can actually do really well. When you look at everything, we came like 4th, then 5th, and then 8th. And I think that we easily had the potential to come top 3, top 4 with the situations we were given and the amount of games that we really just like monumentally fucked up. Like we seriously could have had top 3 in the bag if we just didn't throw like a bunch of games. We just had a lot of games that could have been 5 or 10 pointers and they were 0. And that's what matters, you know, consistency.
Yeah.
I suppose just maybe digging into that a little bit more. Obviously, maybe not performing to the expectation that you set mid-tournament. You mentioned there, you know, making mistakes, etc. What were some of those mistakes made and perhaps some of the regrets that you had at the conclusion of the event?
Yeah, it's actually quite funny because one of our biggest regrets, oh my gosh, was it wasn't listening to Mime enough. Like this guy has some of the craziest ideas and they were so like polar opposite of how the other 3 of us like to play that we just kind of brushed them off sometimes, and they were almost always the right thing to do. So I think he seriously has a set of balls on him, and a lot of his plays require absolutely 0 hesitation. So I think our biggest flaw the whole tournament was really hesitation. Every single game we hesitated would have been a fantastic game if we didn't, but we just dropped 0 points because we made one 10-second hesitation that costed us maybe it would have been maybe like 50 or 60, maybe even $100,000.
It's difficult because it's very easy sometimes as a spectator when you're watching a game like PUBG, maybe even more so than other games, because you can just see everything. Then it's very easy to make assumptions. It's like, oh, why is LG not doing this? Why are they doing that? Blah, blah, blah. Obviously, you've got a completely different view of the battlefield. But I think that the hardest thing is then you're dealing with these hesitation aspects at PGC. So not only are you guys second guessing maybe your own self, but then you're getting pressured by all these top teams. Like, it's not like you're just sitting in NA. It's not like you're playing some OS tournament or whatever. You can do whatever you want. You can hesitate and then second guess and then still get a 20 kill win. But at PGC, you can't really be doing this. So I guess it brings it back then to the coaching environment. I know you guys have got Trevor as part of the team. He's been to a couple of events. Great guy. Met him a few times. What does the coaching do then to help you guys with that? Because obviously the beauty of PGC and these tournaments, they go for a little while. You've got plenty of days to watch VODs, try and improve. You bring up these points such as hesitation. I'm assuming that's not something you brought up on the final day. How do you action that? How do you try and improve it?
I think Trevor does a really, really good job at like grounding us all. I think we've spent a lot of time researching and preparing for PGC. With Mime, I think it became a lot easier to prep and do VOD reviews and stuff like that because he was very eager to do them and he really wanted to put in the work. So we just focused on like laying the base and the groundwork so that we knew that that's just what we needed to follow. So when it came to like worrying, Trevor would be able to reassure us. It's like, do what we've practiced. Like, just do what we've done, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it does, it does. Like, we've done the work, we've put the time in. Let's see if it works on the global stage. So I think Trevor did a really good job at just making sure that everyone was confident in the work we had put in, and I think that really helped us, especially on the new maps like Tago and Vinkendi. We played phenomenal. I think we had the highest point average on Tago, even though we got fed, to be fair, and also we had a very good Vinkendi. So it really showed that just that extra hour or two in prep it really adds more than just the game. It can also affect your mental and just keep you really confident in everything you're doing, which is good, is what you want.
Obviously, we'll kind of bring it back a little bit to your current situation going into 2024. But before I do get to that, I want to ask, off the back of now PGC 23 coming out of it, what were, I guess, the major takeaways going into now, I guess, this year, 2024, for you guys as a team? You've made your roster move at the end of last year. Obviously, you're going to be a set 4 going into 2024. What do you kind of take away from the biggest tournament, PGC 23, going into this year and think, okay, how do we build on basically a pretty decent 8th?
Yeah, I think we just need to build our trust dynamic, I guess. I think there's been a lot of times where we need to trust Mime more, and there's also some times where we've tried to reel Mime back in, and yeah, he's very eager and passionate about everything he does. So I think finding that balance of him getting us out of our comfort zone and him reeling it back a little bit and just playing a little bit more safe, like a little safer. I think just finding that mix and that perfect mix is where I think we'll really find our groove and start showing and hopefully getting top 5, top 3 performances globally. Yep.
Awesome. All right. Well, bring it back now to your Atletico days. Obviously, I'm a massive fan of that particular roster. Anyone in the Oceania region knows it's like, Xenox Atletico, he's mentioning Atletico. Even though it's been dead for 4 years. It's been a long time now. Obviously, you already mentioned kind of a little bit about joining that roster and how that came about. We'll skip that. I'm just going to go straight to what was PCS. Was it PCS back then? PCS 1?
I think so. Something.
No,
like
it actually wasn't even PCS. I can't even remember. It was just AU Into Champs. It was just AU Into Champs Season 1. And final day, you miss out on the FACEIT Global Summit. Obviously, the final game where it goes to the islands out to the east on Miramar. You probably remember that one pretty significantly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I remember that one. That one haunts me still. No, I wasn't even that mad, to be honest. I think I was...
That's bullshit.
No, I was in more disbelief that, like, I had the opportunity to go, like, as I was saying, like, I really was bad at pretty much every video game I've ever played in my life. So the idea that, like, wow, like, I'm so close to actually going to an event and actually being regarded as one of, like, the best in the region and going to an event representing my country, it was kind of, like, surreal. So when we lost, I was like, damn, that sucks. It is what it is. I was obviously very upset, don't get me wrong, but I also was quite good friends with all of like Incog at the time. Yep. It's actually quite funny. I was going to join them before I was going to join Atletico,
and then
but they didn't want to kick someone for me, so I ended up joining Ath. Yep. I was their substitute player for a while.
Yep.
So like I was happy for them. Ultimately, I wanted to play and at London, but it wasn't the end of the world. But I do remember literally every game of that last day, and I remember getting cheesed in Watertown, which is probably the first time
God.
ever an Australian team has done something intelligent in a final day. So I mean, they played well, and like I mean, there's nothing much I could do about that. Even that camp didn't really change the outcome because we still got second that game.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, they played really well, and I was surprised that they were able to like stay competitive with a team that of that caliber at the time.
Going into that particular tournament, you would have just replaced Extreme, right? Because he went to North America. You were the one that replaced him?
No, I replaced Extreme. Yeah.
Yeah. And so obviously there was, I guess, expectations being the ex-Greyhound team, always the kind of top dog team, and then you guys, and then kind of Incog formed, and they came out of nowhere and started to just, take the region by storm. You missed out. How do you think you guys would have gone at London?
Oh, I don't know.
Iteration.
We had Happy on the team, and
Yeah.
I think Happy was like a very slow-paced player, and I think internationals, you can't really be a slow-paced player. You kind of need to be proactive.
Good at the Balties, though.
Yeah, he was good with the Balties, but I mean, like, it's an international. Like, people don't really give
Yeah.
you freebies. Like, the only time you really get Balties is if someone's like directly peeking at you. Like, even like some of the best players in the world right now who use Balties, like Beamy, like, it's very hard to get huge impact with Balties compared to DMRs.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how we would have done. I don't think we would have done nearly as good as we would have at GLL Grand Slam. To be honest, I think that roster didn't quite have the formation and structure that would lead to success.
Yeah, it was missing a key element, that one being when obviously Extreme came back from his short stint in North America, rejoined, obviously Happy moves aside, and then you have a core four, which is you, Luke, Zoid, and Extreme, which I think at that particular point, it's like, what, midway through 2019? You're not at your peak, Luke's probably close to his peak, and Zoid and Extreme were at their peaks. And so you ended up with this kind of perfect storm where you smashed Season 2 locally. You go over to Sweden, which...
Yeah.
Is that the shirt from
This shirt actually
GLL?
was oversized t-shirt for me back a few
I can
years ago.
imagine.
So now I wear all the ones they gave me now because it just like reminds me of how far I've come.
Yeah, and obviously you mentioned telling your mum about the fact that you're going to Sweden. Too bad, like it or not. When you guys qualified for that event, finally, big opportunity for you, dream come true, essentially. What were the expectations? Because you guys were a really solid fucking team. Like you could have easily said, yeah, we're going into that expecting to win. Was that the case?
I think it's really funny you say that because at that point in time, there was someone on Twitter who did like an ELO generator. And
I remember this.
They actually put us at like second or third,
I think it was third, maybe.
in the world, right? And the amount of people that were just giving us so much shit for it. They were like, you guys fucking suck. Like, this is OS, man. Like, you guys aren't going to do well. You're going to come 16th or 15th, right? So then we were kind of under the impression, like, fuck them. Let's just try our best. Like, we're a good team. We know we can do well. Like, we won our league by, like, I don't even remember how many points. Like, it was boring. It was boring after the second week because we're like, all right, we've qualified. Like, even I, like, who was, like, traumatized from the last event of just missing out by the tiniest bee's dick. But after week 2, I was like, yeah, we're going. Like, we had a 160 point lead.
It was also 3 slots this time.
Yeah, it was 3 slots. We're like, okay. Like, I remember doing the math. I was like, oh, well, I think 4th needs about 180 points in 10 games. Oh, never mind. Like, there's no chance.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, you get there, though. And you started off quite well. Obviously, now going back for those maybe a little bit unfamiliar, back then it was just the straight play, whatever it was, 24 games or whatever, and that was it. There was no groups. There was no second chance, no grand survival. You just played 24 games at the end of it. And I think you ended up getting, like, you were in the lead going into the last game, weren't you?
Oh, dude, I remember that game as well. That's one of the games that haunts me. We got baited into a crash by C9, I think it was. It was an NA team. Brain dead. Anyway, we were first going to the last game, and FaZe were in second, and they got 9 circled in their loot spot, which was it's probably the worst feeling in the world as a PUBG team. Is playing phenomenal all event because 20 points really does shoot you up the leaderboard in PUBG,
100%.
like especially in competitive lobbies. So watching the team right behind you when you've played a phenomenal event, you've got a 10-point lead going into the last game, which is really a lot in PUBG, and you just watch every circle end on their loot location. You go, wow, like that fucking sucks. And there were so many things we could have done differently. Like, it just really, I remember that game. It was so bad. Like, that was seriously the difference between a completely different, like, life outcome. Like, who knows? Luke might have stayed on the team if we won that. Like, you have no idea what would have happened if
Probably
we...
not.
Oh, maybe. You never know. Like, if we won, like, beating all these teams, we might have got a big org. You've got no idea.
No, it's true. I mean, you came so close, and as well, at that point in time, we're talking mid 2019. It was arguably one of the biggest, if not at that point, the biggest team performance from an Australian team competing at a global international event. To finish second, I think the prize pool was like $500,000 or whatever it was, or it was absolutely a massive achievement. Yet you fall short. You finish second. And with that, probably would have come a lot of emotions from that, knowing how close you were to finishing first, which is interesting because prior to that tournament, if someone had said, "Hey, mate, you're going to finish second, win all this money," you would have been like, "Hell yeah!" But by the end of it, were you just distraught?
Dude, no. Like, I feel so bad because I remember the final game ended. Russ was ratting. He was in a 1v something against a team up at Lumberyard, and he died, and he just started breaking down in tears. And I was just like, "We came second. Maybe let's just wait for everyone else to die." And I was over the moon that we came second. Like, obviously I wanted to win, but when I looked at the map, you look at the circle, you know where FaZe is, you know they're dead center and the best spot in zone. They're going to win 9 out of 10 times. You're like, oh, well, hopefully we can come second. So I was actually relieved we did come second because it was quite close, actually. I think we were only a few points from coming third or fourth even. So the fact we came second, I was like, whatever, best outcome for us there. So I wasn't really too distraught at all. It was kind of the same situation as the London. As I was like, oh, wow, like I got this far, like good enough.
It's a good attitude to have, good mentality to have. Did you know then at the time Luke was going to be leaving pretty shortly after?
No, honestly, we had no idea. Like, I think it made sense. Like, even I got some offers, and I didn't regard myself as a good player back then, or like I was okay, but I wasn't anything.
I think Zoid got an offer as well.
Everyone on the team got offers from different regions and teams, but I think once that started happening, I think I knew that Luke was definitely going to go because he was undoubtedly the best player on our team, and he was also undoubtedly one of the best players in the world at the time.
At that time, yeah.
So like I knew he was going to go, and I was happy for him. Like he was like a mentor and someone I played with heaps when I was trying to get better. Like we played SCA scrims every night together for like 6 months straight. Playing, we probably have hundreds of scrim games together. So like I was really happy for him, maybe even thousands actually. I was really happy for him, but I knew he was going to go somewhere good because I had people actually messaging me if they thought if Luke was really good, and I was like, yeah, of course I think Luke was really good. It was actually the Lazarus coach at the time. Yeah. So I knew he was going to go somewhere after that tournament.
Obviously, then short turnaround to what was going to be PGC after. You have to replace him. You pick up Jukesy. If I recall, was it between Jukesy and Vasily and Nick maybe?
I don't even know. We were kind of in shambles when replacing Luke because like, how do you replace Luke?
You can't.
Like, how do you replace like top 5 player in the world with an OS player? Honestly, like there was no one even close to him. I think we got Jukes. I don't know who. I think it might have been between Nick or something. But it was. I think Jukes was definitely like a shoe-in. Like I vouch for Jukes. Like I've been friends with him for a long time, so I was like, yeah, I want Jukes. He was my academy teammate back in the day, actually.
Yeah. Did you guys play on Extricity or something like that?
Yeah, Atletico Academy. He was on Atletico Academy and then Extricity together. So.
Yeah. And the thing as well that kind of sucks is had you gone back a year. It's going to sound really strange, but I actually felt there was probably more individual talent on other teams. Like Old Kasun, you could have probably picked up someone like him at that point, 2018, and that would have been a good pickup. There was some players that had good individual ability. By, I guess, what was end of 2019, all of that original core had started to fade away a little bit, both in terms of not playing the game, but also just maybe getting, quite honestly, worse. So there wasn't really many to choose from. You end up picking up Jukesy, you go to PGC, and wasn't the greatest experience, was it?
No, like honestly, I think that was at that point we realized that like there was more to PUBG than just being mechanically good. I think GLL Grand Slam, we had not only really good zones, but we were uber confident. So we just held the most baller splits, right? And we didn't get punished for it because it's hard to read if teams are being aggressive or not. So we had baller splits, but then going to PGC, losing almost our main call, like Luke did a huge chunk of calling.
Wasn't he like secondary caller?
Yeah, I mean, him and Zoid pretty much did equal amount at GLL Grand Slam, I reckon, if I can remember correctly. I might be wrong, but yeah, like we realized how important Macro actually was. Like, we were all mechanically very good and pretty even. I would say we were all average, but we weren't as bad as we did, right? I think we came like 28th or 26th or something around there. But like, we
I don't know if
definitely
you remember, but the very final game that you guys played,
yeah, we were so close.
it was that close, and I remember watching it live. It was on Miramar. Was it Red Canids?
Yes, it was Red Canids.
Yeah.
It was southwest of Chumasera on the Shack Hill. I remember that. I remember pretty much every bad game, or every game that
You can, if
meant
you
a
go
lot.
back and watch the VOD, you can actually hear me cheering.
Really.
Yeah, and
There
then
you
being
go.
really sad. We had some fun after though. After you guys got knocked out, we had some good fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously that was a lot of time with Atletico. I mean, I guess your time on Fury then came after that, which ended up being, I looked it up, a year and 2 months at Ath, a year and 3 months at Fury. I guess just a very quick. I probably won't go too much into Fury, only because that period was like the COVID period. So a lot of it was just online, PCSs. Like there was no really like massive like GLL and like missing out on London or PGC. But what was that experience like on that particular roster?
Oh, honestly, I think about Fury when I go to bed sometimes. I think Fury was by far one of my favorite teams I ever played on. I think that's the first team I've ever played on where I had 4 people who thought the exact same way. Like everyone had an identical mindset, an identical play style, and we all just gelled well together. It really was magical at times. Just seeing how well we were able to like read what each other were doing. Like we didn't even need to comm a lot of times. We just knew what each other were doing. We knew how each teammate would play certain situations. So like honestly, I was really sad. I think we had so much potential in that team. I think we could have done so much better than we did, because I genuinely believe we stayed together. I think we could be a top 8, top 6 world team with the playstyle we had. We seriously were such a cohesive unit at the time, and I think there was so much more we could have done and we left on the table. So I do feel sad about that sometimes.
It's just very quickly, I think the biggest one you played was PGC 21, if I remember correctly. I think that was like the only big tournament that you guys played as Fury, and that was a tournament that unfortunately you didn't really perform that well at. So was that kind of then the catalyst for departing?
Not really. I mean, that tournament was really interesting. I think we had some really good individual performances, but I think where we struggled was kind of almost where APAC struggled as well, is macro. At the end of the day, like macro is incredibly important at internationals. The teams who are consistent and have good lines and good play styles usually just do best. But I think Insight was calling at the time, and we kind of struggled a bit because it's not like OS. You don't just get to go, all right, well, let's just chill on our edge. It's not like APAC. It's like, all right, let's just fight this team on the edge. Let's just take our time. It's not like that at all. You really have to plan, and there's certain areas of the maps that if you're on the edge, you're just going to die no matter what. And we didn't really have that strategy down pat of like, okay, we need to get out of here. We need to go middle. We need to send somewhere. So I think that wasn't really the reason I left. I think it was just because Oath were at the time like some of my best friends. Like I'd Kick, Relo, Snakers, they're all really, really good friends of mine. So, I mean, it was just kind of a no-brainer when Cal said he didn't want to play with the team anymore. He wanted to move to an NA schedule. I think we had maybe Monty joining the team. Like Ronan wanted to quit. It was like kind of everyone's time to leave and go separate directions, which was really sad because like we made a lot of mistakes, and I think at the end of the day, the reason we did so shit was because our macro and calling was really bad. I think we swapped IGLs mid-tournament. I started calling for a little bit, and I didn't do an amazing job. I did my best at the time. But no, I left because at the time, like joining Oath was just the best decision I could possibly make.
Okay, yeah. So Oath are United?
Yeah, PGC 21 wraps, and I guess you hinted on it a little bit. It was probably time for a change of scenery. How did that opportunity to move across come about, and was it as easy as getting the offer and ticking the box, or was there perhaps a little bit more thought that had to go into it?
Look, as an Aussie, you know, sometimes you got to get a little dirty, and I think I got pretty shit-faced with the Oath boys quite a few times in Korea, and I think that really helps, by the way, if you want to get a team, get shit-faced with them, because you build a bond, you know. But yeah, it kind of just came around. It was really easy, surprisingly. Like I thought I'd have to do some trialing and that I'd have competition, but I really didn't. I joined the team pretty much after a week of scrimming because I played surprisingly insane for the first week on 220 ping scrimming, and they were like, "Holy shit, you're actually cracked." And I'm like, "Okay." And that was it. I really joined the team quite quickly after that. They didn't even trial anyone else. It wasn't like do I have to beat this person? Do I have to be better than this person? It was I'm boys with them. We gel well. We have good personalities. Like we're a team. We're a bunch of brothers, and they think I'm good. So they really did. It was so simple. I really just joined.
Yeah, in a kind of twilight moment here, what happens if that had gone really shit? What happens if the 220 ping wasn't great and you were dog shit and they did get someone else in? What was next for Flood?
I don't know. I probably would have stayed with Fury. Like Fury wanted me to stay to some degree. Wanted to make like a few roster changes. We had Snooper as our coach at the time, and he's proposed some changes, which one of them I thought was pretty stupid. But anyway, we'll get into that. But I would probably stay with Fury. I think the team itself had an incredible foundation and fundamentals, so I don't think it would have been too difficult to replace like Ronan necessarily once he retired. So I think I would have stayed with Fury. I don't think I'd be where I am now. I don't think we'd be as good because you need 4 like players who are just really, really good to be top 8 at PGC really. So I don't know if I'd be there. I could. Maybe if we worked hard and put in the effort, we could be there, but I don't think I'd be here today.
I feel like as well, no disrespect, but by that point in time, OS was really bad. Like, we're not even talking like the 2018, 2019 levels where you had teams that... There was actually quite a lot of teams. You think back to the old Avant-Garde, Tainted Minds, Chiefs, you had Incognito, you had Ath, like you had Team Immunity. Like all of those teams were pretty neck and neck, and they could all win on certain scrim nights and do well in tournaments. By the time you got to, I guess this was like, 21, 22, OS was basically a feeder competition.
Yeah, this was like the Fury abuse era.
Yeah.
That was like, we'd play and just shit down everyone's throat, and then they'd just fight for second, really.
Yeah.
I think we won a best of 18 by like 120 or something. Like it was really, I actually remember quite vividly. It's quite funny actually. We were playing the qualifiers to go to like a PCS or something.
Yeah.
And I had a party at 21st that night, and I was running late and quite late. So my plan was like, all right, I'm just gonna down like 5 shots in this compound, boys. We were fed. We were very fed. So I was just downing shots of vodka. I think I had like 6 or 7 shots. I was shit-faced by the time we left the compound, right? And somehow I dropped like 8 kills. And it was probably one of the best games I'd played in a month or two. I was like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to get shit-faced every fucking quals ever. But it was really funny because like it was pretty simple. And it wasn't necessarily because people were bad. Like there's actually a lot of really good mechanical players in OS. It's just no one works together. No one knows how to work together. Not many people understand like the terrain and how it works. Like fighting lines was very like uncommon term that no one really knew. I think only maybe 4 or 5 OS teams kind of understand that. So I think we were just miles above the competition, and you could see it like really easily just by looking at any game.
Bring it back to sort of the E United makeup. Then you obviously go to PGC 2022 in Dubai, which was a fun tournament, I think, and obviously you guys ended up doing quite well there. You finished 4th overall, so this was obviously back with Kickstart. He had an amazing tournament. We kind of touched on that before. You did as well when I had a look at the numbers. I think it was basically you and Kickstart really led from the front in terms of damage, in terms of kills. You were the offensive players. It seemed like you guys clicked pretty much on all cylinders. Anytime you can finish top 4, and especially you kind of look at the teams that were above you, Twisted Minds 17 at Na'Vi, like those are some really good teams. You had a good tournament. Did it, I mean, I guess from your perspective, play out the way you anticipated going into Dubai?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was kind of shocked by Dubai because the 3 of us, excluding Kick, didn't really play that well statistically for the first bit. So Kick really carried us. But when it came to the finals, like, I never expected to play as good as I did. Like, I don't want to, like, jerk myself off, but...
Do it.
Dude, I was shocked. I was like, why is no one like gassing me up? Like, I literally did the best any NA player had ever done in a GLO. I mean, not a GLO, in a finals, a PGC finals. Like, I was like 4th or 5th top frag. Like, and considering we had like a 10-point last day or like 12-point last day, I was not very far behind just top fragging the whole event, right? In a PGC finals. And I was shocked because I remember Trevor coming up to me and said like, dude, you're top fragging. And it was like day 2. I was like, wait, really? Like, I don't feel like I'm playing well at all. So like the teams we lost to, you can't be mad. Like those teams, that event in itself, there was very clearly only 4 teams who were consistent and really going to do well. That was us, 17, and Navi and Twisted, yeah. So it was really clear who was like the best 4 teams, right? So I mean, we weren't too mad losing to any of them because they're all great teams and they still are. Maybe Navi's fallen off a bit, but 17 and Twisted are undoubtedly the 2 best teams.
You did have a good opportunity though to probably win the whole thing, especially after the first couple of days.
Yeah, look, we had, like, I won't get into it, but Kick had a personal issue come up in the last day, and I think Kick was a massive part of our team calling structure and our team dynamic. Like, we really centered our play style around Kick because he was really good and he was great at getting those opportunities for us. So when you have someone kind of shut down a little bit, it makes it a lot harder to play. So I think that's where we pretty much shit ourselves the last day because Kick was dealing with something that was pretty life-changing. So he wasn't coming as much. Like he was clearly not vocal, clearly had something going on that we didn't know about necessarily. We were just like, what's happening?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't blame it at all. It was pretty rough for him and I won't get into it, but, yeah, we could have won probably. I mean, we had like a 12 or like 15. We did shit in the last day. Like we really shit our pants and we should have, I still think we should have come top 3, top 2, maybe even a win if we played really well.
I hate to say it, Locke, but this is the story of your career, which is we probably should have won. It's happened quite a couple of times.
Oh, it's so easy to say that, because like PUBG is one of those games where like one tiny mistake can be the difference between like 5 and 20 points. So like any team can say like, oh my gosh, we almost won, right? And that's why I never really look into it too deeply because any team can say if we made no mistakes, we would have won, right?
Yep.
But it's the teams who do make the mistakes. So you just got to learn from that. So I never really dwell on like, oh, we could have won, right? Because any team would have won if they made 0 mistakes. It's just about mitigating those mistakes.
Yeah. Very, very quickly before we go into some of the different topics, but do you guys have a rivalry with like Sonics?
Oh, I think fans like to think we have a rivalry with Sonics. When Kick was on the team, like, Kick's quite a topical character, but he hated fighting Sonics. Like he called very differently versing them. So I guess kind of in that subconscious level, we did have a rivalry with Sonics because we always thought we were kind of better than them necessarily. And the results showed that when we had Kick, like we were always doing better than pretty much. So we definitely did have a rivalry, but not as much as the Sonics fans like thought we did. Like we didn't really care because we knew we were good. We knew that we had better fundamentals and like when you look at PGC 2022, they sucked. Like Tig was coming up to me like, "Oh, you did great in that one game," and I'm like, "Cool." And like they didn't even make finals, so we definitely respected them and knew they were pretty much our main competition for the whole year. But it wasn't like we hated them or anything. Like I mean, I certainly didn't. I'm good friends with all of them. Still am. So, I mean, they weren't really rivals. They were just kind of, I guess people like to think of them as rivals because...
Just competitors.
Yeah, just competitors. And they were just the only team that was really challenging us at the time. So it just looked like we were rivals, even though it was just first, second,
Yeah.
But it wasn't necessarily we went out of our way to do anything. They went out of their way a lot to try and camp us and do stuff, but we just kind of played our own game.
I guess moving forward then, PUBG as an esport has changed a lot over the years in terms of tournament structure, point systems, everything really. What are some of the highlights and lowlights maybe in your point of view in terms of those structures? Because I mean I would identify as a pretty casual viewer, so for me it might be a little bit harder to identify the differences, but there's been so many different formats. Are there any that you prefer or maybe hated?
I really hated the placement point meta and the water meta where people would just jump in the water and swim. I think PUBG have made a few really good changes, like land ratio, eliminating water as a viable place to stay. Like that one was the worst by far. Like you'd have 20 people just beeline to the coast and sit in the water and it'd be impossible to kill them. That one really, really sucked. I think bringing in the kill meta, the 10-point chicken dinner and the 1-point kill was really good. There's a few things they could do better, but I think they've done an overall pretty good job. I think the thing that they're really struggling with at the moment is like it's hard for fans to connect with the teams because you don't really get to see what happens inside the team. So that's where fans just make assumptions. Like a really good example is like Sonics doing shit at PGCs. Like the fans just flame the fuck out of them, right? And they have no idea what's going on, right? They're just making guesses, and there's nothing worse than reading brain dead comments, honestly. Like when I read brain dead comments on Reddit or Twitter, I just go, God, you're stupid, right? So I think PUBG could try and implement some sort of voice comms and like listen-ins. I think OS leagues and some other leagues, like they do listen-ins, and I think that'd be really important. They already record our comms, right? I don't think it'd be too big of an ask to listen in sometimes, especially during like the earlier game. Like the problem with PUBG is there's like 15 minutes before anything really interesting happens. And even me as a player, like I don't watch games. Like I skip to phase 4. And I feel like a lot of other viewers probably do the same thing, because realistically, once you get to a high level, no one really dies until phase 3 or 4. And if something does happen, it's usually like instant. It's like a quick and instant fight and it's over. And usually spectators miss them. I think the observers could use a lot of work too. So it's such a hard game to capture all the action.
Kind of skipped forward about 2 topics there, so I might just bring it back a little bit and talk.
Oh, my bad.
No, you're fine. It's all good. We'll come back to that very quickly. I do want to ask, obviously, PUBG as a game has gone through a couple of different maps throughout its era. You played back in the Sanhok days, for example. You're now playing in the Vikendi days. Taego's obviously been a really good implementation. I think the vast majority of people I've spoken to have said Taego's a good map, plays well, plays a lot more similar to your OGs like Erangel and Miramar. What's your thoughts in terms of the map pool rotation, and I think probably where it's heading? We know there's going to be new maps that come in for 2024, and there's going to be some maps that'll go in and out. Do you think that's the right way forward?
Yeah, I think they need to, like PUBG needs to make sure they don't get into a spot where it's like 1-1-1-1. I think that makes it really clunky and really, I don't know. I don't like that. I think they should do map rotations. I think Miramar and Erangel are kind of just the goats. Like they're the most enjoyable to watch. They're a little bit repetitive with the circle settings at the moment. But I do think they shouldn't just keep adding maps to the rotation. Like right now, it's like 2-1-1-2 or something. I think they should do 3-3. They should keep it consistent, right? And I don't really like how they're spreading them out necessarily, because not only does it's kind of a weird like concept to understand, but when you have the map spread out, it almost makes the day feel faster and like you have less opportunity, even though you have the same amount of games, right? But when you swap from a map to map, it's kind of like an instant reset, so you can't really carry momentum. And I think momentum is really important for a lot of teams.
Yeah, there's a point with the 6 maps a night 2-1-1-2 system, where after the first game, you're then going to play 4 different maps in a row. You're going to play Erangel, then you're going to play Taego, then you're going to play Vikendi, then you're going to play Miramar. It's really hard to get consistency with that, right? And it adds that RNG element. I think there's definitely positives to both, especially from like a viewer's perspective, where it's like the battle royale sense of like what a battle royale esport should look like is the chaos and fun and the entertainment value you get, where you send these 64 pros in and they're jumping from map to map, and it's a different experience and a different play every time. But then you're probably losing a bit of that competitive edge.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. Like when they changed it to 2-1-1-2, it definitely felt like if you had a really big game, like game 1, it was really hard to carry it out through the rest of the day, because you're just swapping. Some maps have completely different playstyles and completely different priorities, right? So if you say, for example, play Erangel first and you have incredible high kill games and you've played a lot of space and control, then you go to Taego where you have to play a little bit more confined and more like forest fights. Like it's completely different style, right? So it's hard to carry that momentum forward. So I'm not a huge fan of it. I understand why viewers might like it, but I don't know. It's such a hard topic, because I love the new maps, but I also don't like how like split up all the games like how they feel when they're split up so much.
Well, I guess what would you do to change that for, I guess, your own personal benefit?
Yeah, I think like, see, I don't even know. Like, there's no real right answer necessarily, but I would try and keep it 3-3 at least. So I think you should do 3 Erangel, 3 like Miramar, then you should do 3 Taego, 3 Vikendi, and then
that's what I thought.
And then you should then end it off in 3 Erangel, 3 Miramar. So because you're still playing the same amount of games pretty much. Exactly the same amount.
Yeah, I feel like then in terms of going into the night, because I was actually thinking this as well. I'm thinking like night 1, it's 3 Erangel, 3 Miramar. It's a lot easier as a team to just go into it. You don't have to worry about Vikendi, you don't have to worry about Taego. But then night 2 comes around, 3 Taego into 3 Vikendi. It's a lot easier to then just sort of focus in on those 2 particular maps, and you also get consistency. It's not just one and done. You're not just playing 1 Taego and then you're out. You're not just playing 1 Vikendi, you get fucked by a snowstorm and then you're out. You get 3 goes at it.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of pros really hated it too, because when Tago first came out, it was just Tago, and it was like 2-1-3.
2-1-2.
It was 2-1-3, I think, or like it was maybe 2-1-2. But like that Tago for a lot of teams became like, we don't really need to study it. Fuck it, if we get 5 points, that's good, right?
Yeah.
So and then it became like a lot of like scrappy, and like Tago when it first came out, there was heaps of fights. No one really knew where to play because everyone was just like, if we get 5 or 10 points, like fantastic, right? But as once it became like you have to play this and then Vinkendi, people are like, oh shit, we better start studying. Like it's not just like a one and done. Like this is 33% of our games are these two maps that we've never really studied before. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you enjoy current PUBG more than like 2018, 2019?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think old PUBG was so like it was too straightforward. Like you didn't actually require that much strategy. It was just whoever had better aim necessarily and a bit more teamwork. I think there wasn't that many fundamental differences between teams, other than maybe some of them knew some rotations better and some of them had better practice, like the Chinese teams, the European teams had better practice, right? But I think today is so much more like advanced, in depth. Like any team, like when you look at PGC 2023, you look at the grand finals lobby, you look at the winners bracket lobby, you're like, holy shit, there's not really one bad team here. Like every team here could win, like if they had a really good day. So I think there's more depth to competition, and like everyone's just so much better, not only on a mechanical level, but in terms of like strategy and consistency. I think everyone's a lot better these days than back in the past.
I guess to wrap a bow on this, I just want to talk about maybe the balancing of the game a little bit. Tiggleton mentioned that he wasn't a big fan of the philosophy around gun balancing, right, and just ramping up recoil as a way to tune them out. Firstly, is that a point that you agree with? And maybe are there any other elements of the game that you think are poorly balanced at the moment? What would you do to change it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Tig and I share very similar views on this. I think upping recoil has to be one of the stupidest ways to balance a gun, because all it does is make it harder for casuals, because the good players, they're going to still use the gun. Like, they're just going to get better at controlling it. Like, if you think about back in the day, the M4 was a literal laser. It had half the recoil it has now. And what happened? Like, people still use it. People just get better at recoil control. Like, all the pros, like even myself and Tig, like, you can control the barrel like a laser from super far away, right? And they just keep upping and upping the vertical like recoil. Yeah. At what point do you stop? Because these new players, right? If I'm a new player and I jump into PUBG and I shoot 5 bullets of a barrel and my crosshair is in the sky, like you're like, oh my god, this is how am I ever going to play this game? It's not very like beginner friendly, and you don't want to dumb it down too much, but at some point, like, you need to realize that if you're balancing strategies just to try and make the good players worse, it's only going to make them better.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I remember actually when the barrel first came out, and obviously it was just like everyone was using the barrel. Like, it was just like you got to have it. If you don't have it, you're trolling or you've been super unlucky. And then like I'd go and play, and I'd pick up the barrel, and it's just like not for everyone, is it? Right? And that's where, I mean, to be fair, there's a skill element to that, but you got to draw a line as to like, all right, well, to make it harder, we'll add more recoil, and it's like, as you said, that just kind of widens the gap. Then the pros will be able to control it, but the average player is probably not as much. We'll skip forward to essentially a bit more of a fresh topic that we didn't even have with Tiggleton, but really life as a professional gamer. And I guess this is not really just about PUBG, but obviously you're a pro esports player. That's your job. That's your life. What are, I guess, some of the routines that pertain to that maybe people aren't aware of, like something that they're not quite aware that a pro gamer would go through?
Honestly, I think there's a lot of stigma about pro gamers being lazy, I guess. A lot of people think that we just sit at our computer all day. I actually probably should put more time to the game. I think I juggled uni and PUBG and socializing and sport and working out. So, like, I don't think I did necessarily anything different, but I definitely put in less hours than people think I may have put in. I think you don't actually need to play PUBG that much. Like, I think if you scrim once a day and maybe play an hour or two of pubs, like, you can maintain like a high level. If you're a content creator, I think like a streamer, and you can make that work and just play more, like, you'll look at all the best players in the world, like Shrimzy, Kick, Tig, like, they all stream a shitload, right? They play like 10 hours a day. Like, obviously they're going to be better, but not every pro can do that. And especially in like OS, and like when I first started becoming a pro, like, I was very, very skinny, and like I didn't really have much going for me other than waking up, playing PUBG, eating, 1 or 2 meals a day and then playing more scrims. Like I scrimmed like 3 times a day at that point. Like I had a degenerate schedule. It was crazy. I don't know how I did it. I wish I could get back to being able to enjoy doing that much because I was good at the time. Like I was above the curve. I think I'm probably on the curve or maybe a tiny bit above it now.
But I feel like that's where you're at a different point in your career, though. You think back to back then, and your life as a pro gamer was the improvement part where you're grinding and trying to get to that peak level. I guess in some ways you've probably reached that peak level. No offense, but you're 24 this year. I don't know if there's much improvement left. You'd probably agree with that, unless obviously I know you'll say, well, if I just sat there and played 10,000 hours.
No, I really think there is more improvement. I think I had a lot of...
That's a good attitude.
Dude, I seriously do. Like, I've been pretty lazy, I won't lie. Like, when you get complacent with results and you get complacent in a team, like, you don't really put in much effort. And I definitely feel guilty about it. Like, I had so much else going on in my life that PUBG was kind of just a side gig at a point. Like, especially in peak, like, uni, when I needed to get everything done, the units were hard. Like, I would play scrims and then not touch the game. Like, I genuinely didn't play pubs or, like, TDM. And I think a lot of pros did this, right? And it's a little sad because I didn't really like playing the game at all. Like, I just played scrims. That was the only, like, joy I had in PUBG, really, was just scrimming. And then after that ended, like, once scrims finished, I was gone. You wouldn't see me until 8 a.m. the next morning.
It's really difficult to explain it. I'll bring it back to my professional playing career. I don't know if you know, I was a pro player in Paladins back in 2016. Wow. Good old young Xenos. Pro. If you make money from a game, if you play a tournament and you make money, that's pro.
What was your overall prize winnings?
2K.
That's not bad.
For O's at the time, I'll take it.
That's your day right
now. My point
now.
is, I hated the game. I didn't like playing it, and despite liking it when I first started, and then you get into that kind of like pro environment, you're scrimming non-stop, and then you kind of get it, when it becomes a job almost. Not that for me it was, but for you, obviously, PUBG is a job. You do lose a bit of that passion, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the thing. Like, once you lose that passion, that's when you start declining as a player. Like, because I was so passionate about PUBG when I started. Like, who plays 3 scrim sets a day as like a 19-year-old who has uni on the side as well? Like, it was like 9 hours a day, right? And it's not even like playing pubs where it's relaxing. It's like I'm thinking like 8 hours a day. Like, I'm playing 18 like games a day of scrims, right?
Yep.
So yeah, once you lose that joy, it's so hard to find it. That's why I'm really glad I found it again. And I found it through trying to help other people get better, because I didn't actually realize how many people like want to get better at PUBG. I'm like, because I'm like, why do I play this game? Like, I play it because it pays me and that stuff. But I've kind of refound that joy through like teaching people and trying to help others.
It's interesting that, and I guess this is just more of a discussional point in terms of scientifics of stats, where when you kind of go and look at like the age gaps for esports, everything's like from 16 to 20 or whatever is like the improvement line, and then it's like once you start reaching early 20s into then your late 20s, you see that decline. I think a lot of that comes from the fact that when you're like 16, 17, 18, 19, you can just play the fuck out of something. Like, you have the time, whether even if you're at uni, you have the time. If you're in high school, you certainly have the time. You don't have as much life stuff going on, so again, you can just spend weekends upon weekends or days upon days, nights upon nights, just playing. Therefore, you're getting better and better and better. At some point, though, you do reach a point where, you know, you start to enter your early 20s. You've got things going on, whether it's uni, jobs, other life commitments. And I think that's probably the main factor for the decline, because I think mechanically, you probably still feel better than ever.
I mean, yeah, like recently I've been playing, like mechanically, I felt insane. Like, I've always struggled with feeling confident about my mechanical skill, but recently I've just been feeling insane. It's because I've been playing more, and it's because I've kind of like re-sparked that joy I had. So I guess you can kind of correlate like being happy and enjoying the game with being good at it, because I think once you start to hate the game, you kind of just don't care anymore. And I think I don't even necessarily think that being young is a huge benefit in PUBG, because experience is one of those things that matters so much in the game.
Yeah.
But I think being dedicated and like consistent with the game is the most important thing.
Yeah. What's your view, I guess, then on the community perception of like PUBG pros?
Oh, the only community like feedback I've had from being a PUBG pro is every time I play pubs, I just get abused. Everyone's like, why don't you go play ranked, you sweat lord or something. Like, I've been called every name in the book for just playing pubs, right? So I think people don't really respect PUBG pros, like, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because I think in terms of being a pro, PUBG is one of the easier games to become a pro. Like when you look at CS and some of the other ones like League, like it's fucking hard. But I think PUBG was a lot easier. Like you can have players who kind of suck at video games in general, like me, make it up there. So I mean, I don't really see that much. Like no one really watches PUBG. Like it's not a huge like viewer engagement type
in
of
the
game.
West, I think.
Yeah, in the East it definitely is, but like in the West, and that's where I'm from. That's where most of my community is. Like you don't really have huge communities, but the people who do end up watching it and do end up like engaging with it are usually pretty passionate.
Yeah, okay.
It's interesting that you bring up sort of the viewer experience and also probably re-sparking the passion in the game. I think that's something that PUBG really needs to work on heading into this year. What big ideas would you implement on a broadcast side to try and increase that engagement?
I think on a broadcast side there needs to be something to watch for. Like there needs to be some reward or incentive that actually is good. Like I think PUBG has like drops. Like who cares? It's this shitty little skin, right? Like no one really goes, I'm gonna watch this because I get this tiny red outfit. Like
the EP tokens. And
yeah,
shit.
like the tokens are like I have like 1 billion tokens, like, and I can't even use them. Like I use like 100k every now and then to open one box. It's like how pointless and counterproductive is that? I mean, I had a meeting with PUBG devs at PGC, and I told them like, look. The same thing applies for broadcast. Like you need to have a reason for people to do something. Like a lot of people are simple, you know. If there's something to work towards or something to gain out of something, they'll do it, right? So I think from a broadcast perspective, like PUBG need to implement like maybe an esports pass or something that watching the stream or like quizzes and getting answers right give you something. I just think there needs to be more interaction. Otherwise, you just sit there and you're really just watching for the sake of it because you like it. There's no extra incentive for new people to come in. It's kind of like a community that is already created and very tight knit, that in order for new people to come in, they either have to have a friend who brings them in, because it's very, I personally don't believe people just randomly go, I'm going to watch PUBG Esports. Oh wow, that's awesome. Like it's one of those games that's super hard to like watch unless you understand it. And even then, like it's not very like beginner friendly. I think it's one of those esports it's a very tight-knit community, and it doesn't seem like it's growing that much more.
I think you're spot on there. I think that you could probably say that for a lot of esports, where maybe the main game itself has maybe moved away from its peak period and then to the lower period. You could probably say that for even like a Rainbow Six Siege, for example. But for PUBG, especially, if you think back to when it obviously blew up, like it was massive, the most played game on the planet, it was very easy to then get a subsection of that enjoyed it. Now that the game is no longer at that kind of level, it's really difficult for people to just like naturally find game, play game, like game, watch esport version of it.
Yeah.
So I agree with you there. I think though then it probably means that you should focus on improving the experience for the people that actually do watch it, keep that segment, and then look to build from that. One of the suggestions, obviously, from Tiggleton when we had him on was the copying of the Apex Command Center, where obviously, and I think you kind of touched on it a little bit in terms of like getting to know the teams a bit more, listening to comms, but basically, instead of, especially considering they've got bloody 60 observers at these events, like you can follow every single team, get their comms, and I think have that kind of command center would be the next step for PUBG.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like even on their YouTube, they will release like tiny little 5 or 10 minute videos of like player comps, and I think they're more interesting than a whole day or even a whole tournament sometimes. Like people care about people, you know, like they want to know what it's like to be a pro. They want to know how everything works, because at the end of the day, like the people who watch competitive games, they play the games themselves usually, and they're interested to see who's the best of the best. And if you don't have like that connection, it's really just watching. I mean, there's just no connection there, and viewers need and want to be entertained, and I think the best way to entertain is create a connection.
Yeah, I think when I think back, and obviously touched a little bit on this with Tiggleton in that interview as well, I think back to like the early days of OCE when I started to get involved, and I think back to the almost personal relations that you could sort of build with the players, therefore then the community that would watch it. Like if you were an OCE esport watcher back in 2018, 2019, you'd know the players. Like, because simply being, I would make sure to go around and actually like spectate all these players, talk about all these players, all the, you know, the things that they, you would know the majority, at least for like the top 10, 12 teams. It's really difficult to do that though on a main broadcast when obviously we have no control over the the observing or the cameras or anything like that. And then two, you have to paint the whole picture. It's really difficult to get really personal with the players in particular. So it's really difficult. I think creating I'm trying to think back, obviously, what James was saying in terms of creating more personal relationships with the players, therefore making it easy to be fans. Because at the end of the day, it's about the players, it's about the teams. That's what it should be about. And I think that the main broadcast probably can't do that. I think you need tools such as the Apex Command Center. I think there needs to be ways to also make better content with the players, get them involved, get them on the broadcasts, do more like post-game, pre-game interviews, things like that. Get the players to be more at the forefront. Would you be, I guess, open to that as a professional?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at PGC 2023, like, our team was like harassed by the media in a good way. Like, they wanted us to do so much, and we just said, like, yeah, let's do it. Like, fuck it, let's do it. Like, because at the end of the day, like, if you just sit back and don't talk to anyone, just play the game, sure, you might do well, but no one's really gonna want to, like, if people only want to watch you for performance and not like because you're a fun team, like, you're not going to grow necessarily as a brand. So I think we were super open to doing so, especially me. Like, I reckon I did like 20 content pieces at PGC.
Good. That's a lot.
And like, I'm not necessarily a very known PUBG player. Like, I don't really stream heaps. Like, I'm trying to start to build my brand. But like, I'm not like one of the known players, you know, like super, oh my gosh, that's Tiggleton, you know, like, oh my gosh, that's Kickstart, oh my gosh, that's like Batulins, Pio, like those types of people, you know.
Luke 12.
Look, maybe in this prime. But yeah, like, I'm always down to do that stuff because it's good. Like, why wouldn't I want to improve the game? Like, the more I improve the game and the experience of the viewers, like, the longer the game will live for and the more enjoyable it'll be for me overall.
Yep. What about on, obviously, content on the side, but what about the broadcast itself? What value do you think that players can add, whether it be on the cast or the desk? And is that something you'd be open to doing?
Dude, something I think that has a lot of potential that PUBG probably will never do is that teams that get eliminated, you should bring the IGLs of each team onto the analyst desk. Like, I think there's so much potential, and respectfully to analysts and casters, you guys know fuck all about the game. I think having actual IGLs, like people who actually know the game, explaining it to viewers, like, is way more interesting. Like, I've started doing like VOD reviews and people are like, oh my god, this is so cool. I'm like, is it? Like, I thought this was really basic stuff. And it's because no one really understands what's going on. Like, no one truly knows what's happening, why teams maybe make decisions. So like, utilizing the teams you eliminate, you don't even need that many. Like, it's just like 5 or 6, right? Utilizing those teams and bringing them onto the analyst desk, like, I think it'd be cool, like seeing like, say, for example, maybe Sonics get eliminated, like, bring Hwin on and he's talking about why a team maybe did something, and like, he's making an assumption or an educated guess, which is going to be better than any like PUBG talent will be able to make. And I think being correct is important in like PUBG, because if you lead viewers the wrong way, it can be confusing.
And I should add here as well, being a caster, it's not a matter of like, okay, go and replace Avenger with H-Win. It's, you keep Avenger because he's a professional talent, my absolute favorite, but you add someone next to him and then he can help lead those conversations. And then you're getting the opinions and thoughts of the pro players sitting next to them. So it's an addition. You don't have to subtract the current talent. And I 100% agree with you. I think obviously no one's going to disagree with you when it comes to talent never knowing as much as the players, unless they're like, ex-player quit 2 months ago.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, even if you're an ex-player, and
but even like, and I want your thoughts on this, because obviously I've been casting with Extreme, obviously ex-teammate, but he hasn't played for a little while, right? It's been, I think, almost 2 years since he retired. He's probably even lost that mantle as almost ex-player already. 100%. It goes by quick.
It goes by so quick. Like, honestly, back in the day, like, it was a go middle, get fed, smiley face, like, type gameplay, you know? So the game's changed so much then. Like, Edge has become way more popular and way better. Teams just better, right? So all the strategies that kind of worked back in 2018, 2019, like, you'd come last if you played them in the tournaments today. Like, 100% you come last. So, I mean, like, having that title, like, oh yeah, I was an ex-pro, sure, you know the ins and outs of teams, but like, the meta's changed, right? It's a completely different game. Not exactly, but like, the game's changed so much, right, that some of your opinions are probably just wrong by quite a bit as well. Like, I've seen some casters who say actually maybe extreme, who say something and they're just so wrong that it's like, wow, like you're really out of touch. And it's only maybe specific examples. But yeah, like that having that pro tag doesn't really mean anything if it's multiple years ago.
Especially, like a Godspeed, for example, too.
Yeah, like Godspeed's a good example. Like he hasn't been a pro for like quite a while, and like NA back then was literally just pretty simple. Like I think the teams of the best players just did the best. Like it wasn't necessarily too much like macro strategy back then.
Would you do casting?
I don't think I do casting because I'm awful at talking. I think I started too much. My brain works too fast. But I think I'd be open to do analyst work because I think I've got a good mind for that. I think I'm very good at like making information easy to understand for viewers. So I think I'd be really down to do analyst work because I think it's more interesting than casting from a viewer perspective. But I don't think I could cast. I think casting's a skill. Like it's being an entertainer, and I don't think I could cast.
Yeah, I mean this is the thing though, right? Like you could be a good caster that has the fundamentals, but your knowledge is dog shit.
Yeah, and that's where I think...
Is that speaking from experience?
Honestly, right now, yeah. Yeah, I need to probably grab Flood after and have a good workshop for 2024 because it's been... it's tricky too because as well, obviously you would have watched the interview with Tiggleton regarding the conversation around it. I think it's just like a refresh is needed going into 2024 and then into 2025, etc., and just try and keep the casters as well knowledge. I think, and even like Extreme as well. Like, it's been a couple of years. Go and have a chat with a Flood, for example. Go and have a chat with a Luke or a Tig or whatever, and just get, hey, what's the differences now from when I played to how you're playing now?
Yeah, and I don't think like people think players are scarier than they are. Like if you send a nice DM, I mean honestly maybe Tig's an outlier and that's just because he's so big. Like you gotta understand, like he's got so much shit. He probably has thousands of DMs, right? But for the majority of esports players, like if you just send them a respectful Twitter DM or a respectful Discord, like say, hey, I'm trying to learn a little bit, like 9 out of 10 times they'll be like, yeah, what do you want to know? It's not like we're gonna say like, oh mate, like fuck off. Like I don't think that'll happen. Like I don't even think Tig would say that. I think he's just so busy. He's just a different type of player. He's a content creator too, and he's a huge following. But like most players, we don't really get that many questions. Like I haven't had a single caster in my career other than maybe you, and that's because I know you on a personal level, who's actually like genuinely gone out of their way. Actually, maybe there's one or two like Toffees, but no one really like tries like to get information that's so easy to get. Like you just walk up to a player, and be like, hey, explain this, and then they'll explain it.
In fairness, the only thing I'll say is that maybe like your EU talent would obviously go to the EU players. They wouldn't go to you.
Yeah, of course. No, that makes complete sense.
Yeah. All right.
Well, we have listed here the NA Oz duo. Obviously, yourself, Luke, and Tig. What's your relationship with those guys? And is there ever a world in which we see you team up? Perhaps again, of course.
Honestly, I don't think there is a world purely because of restrictions. I think I think Tig's actually now counted as an American player because it's about residency, and I'm pretty sure he has his residency in America. But I mean, these players, they're like, I guess you could say my heroes. Like when I was getting better, like I've known Tig for a very, very long time. Like I've known this guy since he was a one viewer Andy, and like I actually went to my very first LAN and I was like 16 or 17 with him. Like literally when I first started playing the game, like I had like a 1 KD at the time. So like Tig and I have been good friends for quite a while. Obviously, you don't really have like that super close bond. Like I wouldn't say we're like best buds, but like we're really, really close friends in that regard. Same with Luke. Like Luke and I spent so much time together getting better. In my opinion, he was literally where I was at, but 6 months ahead of me always, because he was just maybe even a year ahead of me actually. So he's always just been a year ahead of me, and that's why I feel like I kind of caught up, right? Because he had a terrible year with Fury. They really shit the bed, and every time I watch their twice, I'm like, God, how did you fuck that up, right? So I think I've caught up to him, but now he's coming back to NA. Like I think Luke's a phenomenal player still. Like some people say he's washed, but I just don't believe that, not even in the slightest. I think I've watched him play, I've watched him talk, like I know how he plays as a teammate. Like that's where people look at stats and they'll be like, oh, Luke's washed, like look at him, he's not the best in the world anymore. I'm like, no, he's still very fucking good. So I mean, like all these players, they're kind of like who I look up to and who I compete with, right? Like the problem is now that Tig's won PGIS and PGS2, like I'll always be behind him, and I'm perfectly okay with that because I don't even consider myself nearly as good as him. Like he's a freak of nature, a specimen, an athletic specimen. So like I respect Tig a lot, I respect Luke a lot. I don't think we'll ever be on a team together. purely because Osen, like, why would TIG ever like
Yep.
make 3 roster changes? You know, like
Yeah, that's
or
the
2
thing.
roster changes.
And probably in terms of time, there's probably then just not enough time. This is not something that's like, oh, in 3 years or 4 years.
Yeah,
Who
exactly.
the fuck knows? And by that point, you're almost 30. So,
Jesus Christ.
we'll look to start to, I think, close this one off in terms of the main episode. We'll chat a little bit more in the Patreon exclusive, but obviously, so incredible to have you on. Super grateful. You've got a great mind, and hopefully you have a very good 2024. Obviously, the last couple of years have been pretty kind to you in terms of your performances at last 2 PGCs, your time in North America, and I'm wishing you the best of luck once again for 2024. And anything that you want to say before we kind of let you go?
No, I think you're right. I think 2024 is going to be my year. I think I have a lot more focused, a lot more driven. I've had some things happen, so I'm ready. I'm disciplined. I think I'm going to definitely try this year to be a lot more out there with my brand and my content. I think, I don't know if you guys watch, but I've started releasing
Saw
education.
the roll video. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I've started releasing educational videos. Honestly, when I made that video, I was like, this is some basic ass shit. And I didn't expect to have this many people like really like it. Even on my stream, like people are coming in saying like, awesome work. I'm like, damn, like this shit's basic as fuck, you know, like this isn't even the tip of the iceberg, you know, there's so much more beneath that. I can't even comprehend how to begin that, especially the harder topics like lines, because I probably talk about it for like 10-15 hours. So it's like, how do I do that in 15-minute videos? So like, yeah, I'm really looking forward to next year. I think my mental is good, in a good place with PUBG. I'm enjoying the game again, which is incredibly rare. I haven't done that for like 3 years. So I mean, I think I'm going to be really good next year, hopefully. Don't want to jinx it, but I mean, my head's in the right space in terms of just dedicating my my life currently to PUBG.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Locke, for coming on, having a chat. I really hope our paths do cross in 2024 at some events, but I don't know. I didn't get to a single one in 23, so hopefully that changes. But do appreciate you obviously coming on, having a chat with us. Means a lot for the Jake and Guz show. So with that, we'll look to wrap up episode 4, Guz, here for what's been another PUBG bonanza. We need to get someone on that you can talk to, and I can just sit there in the middle chair doing nothing for once.
Gonna have to get someone from Siege. I don't know if they'd be as personable though. I feel like we've set the bar quite high.
Yeah.
So if there's any Siege players out there that can talk,
Yeah,
let us know.
I will add as well. Obviously, last time out when we had Tiggleton's podcast go live, people were like, "Oh, can we get this person on? Can we get that person on?" You know, if we want to do it in studio, they've got to be in Melbourne, and I think we've run out of pretty much the very, very high end of PUBG talent that live in Melbourne. But who knows? If I happen to get to a tournament this year, then I'll get as many as I.
Pack a mic in the suitcase.
I will
and
pack a mic,
go
I'll pack
away.
a camera, and we'll chat to everyone that I can possibly get to. Big thank you to everyone, of course, for those who loved this episode with Flood. Let us know in the comments down below. Hit the bell, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you in the next episode. Much love.